Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Lauren here, and today I have a Restoration Shaman Season 1 guide for The War Within. I am very excited to be putting out a new guide, this time for Season 1 of the upcoming expansion, which is of The War Within. I know I haven't been very active lately here on YouTube, but I am ready to blast, and I'm so happy to see Shaman in such a good spot going into the expansion. And I can't wait to go over all of the topics that I have to discuss with you guys. That being said though, don't forget to drop a like and start subscribing to the channel so you're up to date with everything that I do here up on YouTube. You can also watch me live on Twitch on twitch.tv/LarenTV. In this guide I'm going to go over class and spec changes that Shaman has received over the course of beta and the start of the expansion, stat priority, builds, both for Totemic and Farseer, Restoration Shaman in a Mythic Plus, as well as a raid environment, and last but not least, I'm also going to go over gameplay choices that will have an impact in your overall playstyle, such as Cloudburst versus Healing Stream, Unleash Life versus Undulation, and so forth. The major highlight of our class and spec changes definitely has to be the addition of a new raid buff, which is called Sky Fury. Sky Fury provides our allies with 2% mastery and also grants them a chance to have a 20% chance to instantly strike again for an hour. We also got a completely revamped class and spec trees. We got new and improved survivability tools, and our cooldowns became more potent. All in all, many 2-point nodes in the top half of our spec tree are now only a 1-point node, which makes it far easier to get down to what we actually want. The class tree has had a few major shifts, and some mandatory points for resto were removed or had point reductions, resulting in much easier pathing through the tree to get to the things we actually need. Our cooldowns became more potent due to the additional cooldown reduction talent options such as First Ascendant for Ascendance, as well as Powdering Spirits for Spirit Link. Additionally, one of the big highlights that definitely has been a major improvement over previous iterations of our class and spec tree is the fact that previously we had to spend a lot of 2 talent points into things just to get down to the bottom of our tree, and all of those same talents either got removed or got kept and now just only cost 1 talent point, which is definitely a quality of life. For example, Ancestral Vigor got down from a 2 talent point to only a 1 talent point. Our magic damage reduction defensive in our class tree called Elemental Warding also got reduced from the 2-point node into a 1-point, which is great because it was definitely one of the biggest issues with the class. Overall, Shaman has got very good changes. We are definitely a much beefier class. We have a lot of throughput, we have a lot of good utility that we already had, and this all in all just makes it so that we are very capable of doing very high-end content together with other classes in the upcoming expansion. All of this to add to the fact that our hero talent trees, both Farseer and Totemic, are tuned very well at the moment, and we have the option to pick whichever is best suited for our own gameplay and playstyle. When it comes to stat priority, nothing is really changing for the spec, so you'll still want to favor critical strike first, followed by versatility, haste, and last but not least, mastery. When it comes to min-maxing your stats and checking what's best gear-wise, I do advise all healers to check questionablyepiclive.com, which is the equivalent of raid bots for healing, and it is very well maintained by Volk, and I do advise you guys to check it out. Totemic is one of the 2 hero talent trees that we have available for Restoration Shamans. Its main ability is called Surging Totem, which replaces Healing Rain for a totem, which casts Healing Rain for a certain amount of seconds for a total of 24 seconds, and then you can use Totemic Projection to move it around every couple of seconds within the cooldown of that ability. It is a totem-based playstyle, it has excellent AoE throughput, and it is, in my opinion, the easiest spec to play and will probably be the recommended talent tree for the majority of the player base. When you use Surging Totem on cooldown, it grants you with Whirling Elements, which provides you with 3 modes. The Earth one, which makes your next chain heal apply Earth Living at 150% effectiveness to all targets hit, followed by the Water mode, which makes your next healing wave or healing surge also heal an ally inside of your healing range at 100% effectiveness, and last but not least, the Air one, which makes the cast time of your next healing spell be reduced by 40%. First and foremost, I'll only be displaying 1 to 2 builds for the talent trees, as I don't want to make this video guide way too long. That being said, I did write a guide over in my Discord, so if you do want to make sure and check out all of the remaining builds for all of the hero talent trees, do make sure to join my Discord and check that out. When it comes to totemic builds in a key environment, this will be the standard build that I will be advising you guys to play with. I do want to make a few side notes, one of them being the fact that in the class tree, you always want to make sure that you play with totemic projection, so you're able to move your Surging Totem freely whenever and wherever, as well as in the spec tree. I would not advise you to play Tidebringer as totemic, this being for mainly the fact that you play with Lively Totems, which is the hero talent in your totemic talent tree that makes your chain heals come from totems, so you do not need the talent to benefit from reduced cast chain heals. Also the fact that your tier set already enhances tidal waves, which already reduces the cast time of your healing spells, and you do not need the increased range on chain heal coming from Tidebringer, so you're able to spend other talent points elsewhere, which will be more useful. And for raid, this is an example of a totemic build, which plays with Wellspring as well as Healing Stream Totem and Tidebringer. In raid, Tidebringer will be more beneficial to you and your gameplay compared to Mythic Plus, which doesn't benefit that much from the increased range aspect of the talent itself. Also do note that I did not pick Primordial Wave in this specific build for raid, as I believe it not to be that useful, and if you do want to play it though, you might consider swapping out some other talent in order to path through Primordial Wave. Farseer is all about playing around your ancestors that spawn from a couple of your own spells, namely Riptide for example, Undulation, Unleash Life, and the capstone of Farseer itself, Ancestral Swiftness, which replaces Nature Swiftness. These ancestors cast duplicate versions of the spells that you cast. These are, for example, Lava Bursts into Lava Burst. If you cast Flame Shock, they'll also cast Lava Burst. If you cast Healing Rain, they'll provide you with a chain heal, and so forth. Farseer follows a very familiar playstyle. If you've enjoyed baseline Shaman in the past, you'll feel right at home if you've mastered AA-PTC builds previously, as it is very lenient on Primordial Wave, Riptide, and Cloudburst Totem. That being said, and gameplay speaking, its skill ceiling is significantly higher compared to its opponent, Totemic. Farseer is very passive, but it is also a very active playstyle. With this, I mean that your ancestors are passive, but you have to be doing active damage and healing for them to actually be doing something in the first place. Farseer provides with a lot of high priority damage compared to Totemic. Farseer also has the quality of having a plethora of builds to play with compared to Totemic, and it is also very high effort, high reward. When it comes to Farseer builds in a key environment, I'm going to showcase you 2 builds, one of them which is the first build, which plays with Chain Heal. In this case, you will be wanting to spec into High Tide as well as Ancestral Reach or Flow of the Tides if you prefer the latter, as well as Tidebringer. In the specific build, and as Farseer, I will advise you to play these specific 2 hero talent points which are Latent Wisdom and Heed My Call, as well as playing with Unleashed Life. Unleashed Life, in my opinion, will be the best choice out of either playing Unleashed Life or Undulation in keys, since with Unleashed Life you can guarantee that you spawn ancestors on demand and they will be at their most powerful version of themselves with the hero talents that you pick, which are the ones that I noted. Also, you will be able to spawn them for 16 seconds and you'll be able to Unleash Life into Ancestral Swiftness, so you spawn 2 ancestors out of the way, and then you'll have 1 ancestor per 15/16 seconds. I would also like to note that in the specific build, I am not speccing into Earthen Harmony. One of the main reasons is because anytime that you want to spec into Chain Heal related talents, it's always cumbersome to pick capstones in the Restoration Shaman tree. That being said, Earthen Harmony is important in a key environment. So if you do want to pick the talent in the specific build, I would advise you to most likely either skip Tidebringer or Downpour, and then either pick Earth Living Weapon or Ancestral Protection Totem and path through Earthen Harmony. And this is the second build that I'll be recommending in this video guide for Farseer in a key environment. This is a no chain heal type of build, so it's very similar to a AAPTC playstyle if you've watched my previous guides or if you've ever seen me play the spec in previous seasons of the game, is when you completely ignore chain heal and rely mostly on Primordial Wave to be your bread and butter, as well as Cloudburst and other healing spells such as Healing Wave and Healing Surge. In this case, like I said, you do not cast chain heal. That being said though, I do believe that this build is a bit weaker compared to anything that plays with chain heal related talents. However, it is very capable of doing high keys, and its spot healing is very high compared to anything else that plays with chain heal stuff. That being said though, it is very tricky to play. If you've seen any of my AAPTC guides in the past, it is very preemptive and you need to know damage patterns to be ready to heal them through. And like I said, I still do advise players to follow more of a chain heal lenient build when you're playing Farseer. When it comes to Farseer builds in Raid, this is an example of many. In here you play Unleashed Life with, again, Heed My Call as well as Latent Wisdom, so you get more out of your ancestors with Unleashed Life. Unleashed Life is also a baseline spell usually that you always play in Raid. In this build, you're playing with Chain Heal as Farseer, and you're making usage out of Wellspring as well as High Tide and Primordial Wave. Like I said, this is one of many builds, and I do believe there's other builds with Farseer in Raid in which you play with Undulation and DRE, so mostly Healing Surge and Riptide and other healing spells of the sort related. This being said though, Farseer is a bit weaker compared to Totemic as of now before the season is launched, because Farseers act as pets, and in a raid environment their healing is not smart, so a lot of it gets wasted into actual other players' pets such as Death Knights, Hunters, etc. So in a key environment it is great because it's only 5 players and it does not get that much wasted, but in a raid setting, unless they fix this, Totemic will always be ahead in a raid setting. Generically speaking, and for Mythic Plus, for both Totemic and Farseer, these will be the recommended hero talents. When it comes to keys as Farseer, I would always advise you to play with both Latent Wisdom and Heed My Call, and always pair it with Unleashed Life in the spec tree, and I'm going to go over this in a future segment and also talk about it, but these will be the best options for you to play as Farseer. When it comes to Mythic Plus, this is the dungeon utility chart that I have created for Season 1. Like it is stated, everything that is red is mandatory and needed in the key, whereas everything marked as yellow is not necessary. However, it is present in the key if you pull certain packs. For example, in Mists of Turna Scythe, it is mandatory for you to take Tremor Totem for the first boss, as well as Poison Cleansing Totem in the later packs of the dungeon. However, I do not believe that you need Improved Purify Spirit, as the curses are only present in the first pack of the key, and it's mostly something only on the tank. Otherwise, you can just avoid the pulls / swirlies on the ground and avoid the decurse effect, as well as Purge. Purge is not completely necessary, but it's nice to have in case you miss a kick on the same packs where you need Poison Cleansing Totem. I also want to note that where it reads the Whirlwind icon, it refers to Jetstream. This talent is the node beneath Windrush Totem that clears snares. Some of these same snares in keys can be debuffs, and it is in a way a nice version of Master Spell. Your best options in the class tree to opt out of when you need utility will be Earth Elemental, Primordial Bond, Totemic Recall, and Enhanced Imbues, for example. When it comes to healing in a Mythic Plus environment, I wouldn't say that Restoration Shaman has much of a rotation per se, but I do believe I can give you a couple of tips and tricks in order to perform better when it comes to actually healing. One of the main tips that I want to briefly give you is that you want to be keeping Riptide on cooldown and guarantee that the party is blanketed in Riptide mostly. You also want to be casting Healing Rain on cooldown as well. You want to cast Chain Heal only and mainly during high tide procs. Earth Shield yourself and by default the tank, unless it is on a boss where there is no tank damage but there is group damage, and then you want to Earth Shield the second squishiest target in your group. You want to cast Healing Surge whilst you have Tidal Wave stacks in order for you to benefit from increased critical strike chance and therefore making your healing surges more effective. And you also want to be casting Healing Wave during Primordial Wave cleaves. As well as the tips that I just stated, I also want to reiterate that you want to be buffing your Primordial Wave cleave with either Undulation or Unleash Life, whichever talent you decide to play with. You want to be using Healing Stream Totem on cooldown most of the times, unless you want to save it for on a more healing demanding situation. Whereas with Cloudburst Totem, you mostly want to use them only for that situation when you want to plan healing on demand. When it comes to DPSing as a Restoration Shaman in keys, when you have 2 to 3 targets, you want to prioritize Flame Shocking those same targets so that you get Lava Surge procs and then proceed to make use out of the same Lava Bursts. This is also in conjunction with the new and reworked Master of the Elements, in which after you cast Lava Burst, your next Healing Surge will heal for an additional 50%, I believe. And then after your Healing Surge, it will apply a new Flame Shock and spread that same Flame Shock to a new and random target. You want to cast Acid Rain on cooldown, even in single target, and when you have 5 to more targets, you want to be casting Acid Rain first, and then you want to Chain Lightning spam. When it comes to DPSing in a key as Farseer, assuming that you're playing Unleash Life, your opener in AoE will look like this. You will Unleash Life into Ancestral Swiftness into Healing Rain. This will make your Healing Rain go from 5 targets to a maximum of 7, because you will increase the target capped by 2 with the Unleash Life interaction, and you will also buff the Acid Rain damage component of Healing Rain by 10% from Ancestral Swiftness. And then you will spawn 2 Ancestors, and then you will want to spam cast Chain Lightning in AoE, so they also cast Chain Lightning with you, and you will do Big Burst AoE. In single target, you want to do the same with Unleash Life into Ancestral Swiftness into Healing Rain, and then you want to cast Flame Shock into your Lava Burst charges. I also want to note the interaction that you have with Frost Shock, which is an instant GCD, whereas when you cast Frost Shock, they will replicate the Lava Burst spell with you. When it comes to DPSing in keys as a Totemic Restoration Shaman, in AoE, your opener will look a bit different, so you want to be casting Surging Totem on cooldown, so you get a lot of healing rain / acid rain uptime, and then you want to proceed to spam casting Chain Lightning. When it comes to your single target opener in keys, you want to be casting Surging Totem on cooldown, so you get the most uptime on acid rain in priority targets, and then it's the same rotation with Flame Shock into Lava Burst charges, and then when no more Lava Burst charges, you just cast Lightning Bolt.
Sigil of Silence, countered. Countered.
When it comes to raid healing, Restoration Shaman is a always be casting type of spec, which means that Resto has many active buffs worth paying attention to, which means keeping core abilities on cooldown will always be worthwhile and major to the specialization's gameplay. What this means is that you want to be casting mostly Riptide on cooldown, Healing Rain on cooldown, you want to cast High Tide buffed chain heals on 3+ injured targets in raid, you want to make sure that you refresh Earth Shield as much as possible. The interactions that you want to have and prioritize with Unleash Life in raid are on High Tide buffed chain heals, Downpour, and Healing Rain, and you want to pre-plan incoming AoE damage with Cloudburst Totem. I'd also like to add that these tips that I'm giving for raid are very general, and if you want to improve your raid performance and look through logs, I would advise you to check the Restoration Shaman Discord, which is Ancestral Guidance, which I will leave a link to the Discord in the description box below, and then you can post a log and check with other Restoration Shaman authors to see what you can improve on in raid. When it comes to talents, decision-making / gameplay choices, the topic of Unleashed Life versus Undulation has arose recently. Undulation would have always been the default and the main pick in keys compared to Unleashed Life. However, as Farseer, when you have these two options, I do believe that both are playable, but you will get the most usage out of your ancestors with Unleashed Life, considering that you can play with Heed My Call and Latent Wisdom, which makes them last longer and do more healing and damage. As such, at least with Farseer, I would advise you to play with Unleashed Life over Undulation. As Totemic though, I would default to playing with Undulation, as Unleashed Life doesn't benefit you that much in keys when compared to Farseer, so as Totemic I would resort to playing with Undulation. I would also like to report that amidst the making of this guide, which is the 30th of August, that Undulation got finally hotfixed to work properly with Primordial Wave. So the interaction that we had for years, where you would have to cast Primordial Wave during your 2/3 casts of healing / search or wave, now finally got hotfixed, and now what you want to be doing is simply get the Undulation buff as you would with Unleashed Life, and then you would proceed to Primordial Wave into Healing Wave, and you buff your whole Cleave in a very simple manner as you would with Unleashed Life. When it comes to the topic of Cloudburst Totem versus Healing Stream Totem, it's always the same answer as it always has been in the past, meaning that Cloudburst Totem will always be the best option for the highest of keys, since it has high throughput on demand compared to Healing Stream Totem, where it does not. Cloudburst Totem also scales with the healing that you do, however it does have a higher skill ceiling compared to Healing Stream, but I do have to say that it is not as difficult as people make it out to be, and I do recommend that you try it out instead of resorting instantly to Healing Stream Totem. That being said though, Healing Stream Totem has been tuned to a point where it is competitive with Cloudburst Totem. However, Cloudburst Totem, because of its high skill ceiling, will still perform better, as it should, compared to its counterpart, which is Healing Stream Totem. Healing Stream Totem will definitely benefit more Totemic, because you get more usage out of instant and free chain heals. Healing String Totem is also easier to play with as there is no pre-planning needed, and it is also a very high throughput option, and it is something that I would recommend for a beginner Restoration Shaman. When it comes to the topic of Farseer versus Totemic, both have very different playstyles, and at least in a key environment, both are tuned to such a good level that it literally is up to you which spec you decide to play and which spec you will enjoy the most. I do, however, have noticed some advantages and disadvantages one over the other, and I will notice them here. With Farseer, the playstyle is definitely more baseline Shaman. It has high throughput. The priority damage it provides with Ancestors in single target is definitely higher compared to Totemic. Their AoE damage is very high as well, but it is harder to do in some sense because all of the damage that your Ancestors do is damage that you also have to do, so it is very active in a way, and it is more difficult to min-max in a high key. Whereas with Totemic, it is a default pick that I would say it is very easy to play for the player base. It is way easier to get higher AoE damage compared to Farseer. I do have noticed, however, that Totemic, if you are not paying close attention to your chain heal casts and surging totem casts, that you can run into mana issues in the highest keys in the season. As stated, Totemic would be the default playstyle and build that I would recommend to the general Shaman to play with. It's fairly easier than Farseer and quite accessible for the majority of the player base. In keys, both Farseer and Totemic are up to the challenge, honestly. In my opinion, in terms of playstyle, I'm a Farseer advocate / stan. It utilizes our toolkit in a way that Totemic just doesn't. Other than that, I enjoy the gameplay. Your mana sustainability is close to perfect and your throughput is quite high. I will mostly be playing Farseer in keys in the Season 1 of the War Within, but Totemic will also see play in other keys, as I think one build will be better than the other in terms of healing profiles in certain keys at a high level. In Raid, however, both Farseer and Totemic can be played. That being said though, Totemic should be the default choice, considering that all the healing provided from Ancestors as Farseer is not currently being targeted correctly, so a lot of that healing is going to waste in Raid, and as long as Blizzard does not fix that, Totemic will be the default choice. All in all, I am very happy with the state of Restoration Shamans going into the War Within. I think we're going to have a blast going into the season, and I think, as always, Restoration Shaman has excelled in keys, even when it was not in its best iterations, as I have proved in the past, and done the highest keys possible, especially in Season 3, which was a blast of a season, when Shaman was not the best, but it was still able to compete with the top 10 contenders in keys, and that just goes to show you that Shaman is a banger of a spec and can perform in the highest of keys, and definitely now in Season 1 of the War Within, it is going to perform at its peak, and I am sure we're all going to have a blast as all the talent changes and the gameplay changes just make so that the spec has become a lot more fluid and provides the group with a lot more utility and tools that it has in previous iterations. And that was the Restoration Shaman Season 1 guide for the War Within. I hope you guys have enjoyed this guide as much as I did. I put a lot of work and effort into it and going into the expansion. I think we're gonna have a blast, and I think you guys will too. All in all, thank you so much for having tuned in. I hope I cleared all of your doubts going into the expansion. If you do have any further questions though, do feel free to ask in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends who are rerolling to Restoration Shaman and wanna know how to play the spec and what talents are going to be the best to play in keys and in raid. Do make also sure to check out the written version of this guide in my Discord, and you can always join the community that I have there and chat with everyone and share your Shaman transmogs and Great Vaults and whatever you want to do. I also feature my user interface that you saw in this video guide that I am currently only making it available for Twitch subs, so you can check that out on my Discord as well. That is it. Thank you so much for having tuned in, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.